खबरों से भरपूर।
Read her book, India Wins Freedom, and eagerly waited for those 30 pages which he said that must be published only after his death. And of course, his contribution in education has been remarkable. So ICCR is of course one institution, Indian Council for Cultural Relations, taking education to global arena. But all the modern institutions that we see for funding of higher education, for facilitation of higher education and in school education, he played key role. So Council of Social Science Research, Historical Research, many bodies. I think ICSSR, Professor Deepak Pental would be enlightening us more on the science institutions, so he played a very important role. But one thing I must say that when Maulana Azad, it was during his time that the University Grants Commission Act was being discussed and was being passed. And there is a lot of discussion between him and the then Education Secretary and Finance Secretary, actually, C.D. Deshmukh. C.D. Deshmukh's idea was that why should universities be funded by another institutions? Why should it not be funded by the Department of Education or Ministry of Education? And Maulana Azad's argument was that let universities be at a distance, at an arm's length from government. And therefore we need an institution which is a specialized higher educational institution. And in fact, he went on to say that actually the bureaucracy and the politics should not meddle or interfere with the affair of the university. And then the University Grants Commission Act came into being. It was another matter that I think the first chairman of the UGC happens to be C.D. Deshmukh, who was opposed to the idea of the establishment of UGC initially. Today, of course, the more we remember Maulana Azad, the more we realize how futuristic he was. But today we are assembled here to think loudly that where we are as far as education is concerned. I may not be as much familiar with the school education, but I am a little bit familiar about higher education. So let me talk about this. At the time of independence, there were three challenges, and not only in India, all nations had those three challenges in their development trajectory. The first challenge was that to have institutions of higher education which could accommodate people who come out of school and are willing, wanting to pursue higher education. So expanding the system. It was also realized that merely strategies for expansion would not be sufficient, because if you create seats, but if people are unable to afford or if people are unable to access either because of distance or because of historical deprivation, the purpose would not be served. So making higher education equitable, inclusive was the goal. And the third thing, of course, relevance and quality. And these days we talk about excellence. And at the time of independence, in the planning, in the strategy, right from the Radhakrishnan Commission report, which was immediately after independence, these were emphasized. We have made remarkable progress on all of these three dimensions. When we became independent, Dr. Tilak would vouch before, there were not more than 20 universities in the country, not more than 500 colleges, only about 1 lakh or 1,02,000 students. Nearly all of them were men. All of them were from economic and social elites, high caste, high class. There were very few exceptions like Sarojini Naidu and Dr. Ambedkar, who somehow got the opportunity to get a scholarship supported, sponsored by other people who went on to receive higher education. And today, the things are that now we are more than 4 crore people in higher education. Number of universities are about 1,200. We have nearly 50,000 higher educational institutions. In terms of institution, we are the single largest system of higher education found anywhere in the world. In terms of students, we used to be third, fourth, but now we are certainly second next to China. But I think the China is also, in terms of number of enrollment, is declining. So when the new data comes, maybe we find that we are the single largest system in terms of enrollment. Women are now nearly equal. So gender parity index has increased significantly from 0 to very close to 1. Scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, they may not be as much in higher education as is their representation in the population, but I think they are very close to what the reservation provides for. So as many seats are being filled up and they are coming up. OBC was introduced later on, but then OBC are much more than what their share in the population could be. So we have made remarkable progress. Similarly, earlier we had some pockets of higher education, and it was realized that farther the educational institution is from the home of people, the costlier it is, and in a poor country, people with lower per capita income would not be able to access them. So regional balancing of higher educational institutions. So colleges came up in a large number. Immediately after independence, prior to independence, we had colleges. Many of them, most of them were private colleges. Very few of them had government aids. Post-independence, a decision was taken that even those private initiatives, those colleges would be provided grants and aids. So a new set of institutions came, and for a long time, until almost 80s, we either had, all universities were government universities, we had only government colleges, and we had government aided colleges. So St. Stephen's was a private college, but then became government aided college, and so on and so forth. So these were the kind of initiatives that we took. About quality, of course, many people say that we are lagging behind, we are not at par with the best in the world or even with the average in the world. Yes, there are weaknesses in the system, but my personal feeling and my understanding is that yes, higher education needs to change drastically, but I won't say that our higher education system is very bad. If we have become $3 trillion economy today, it is all supported by people who are educated in India, who received education in India. Our productivity may be a bit low, but we have been able to sustain. And if we are now targeting or thinking of at least becoming the $5 trillion economy or $6 trillion economy, that is again on the basis of the manpower that we are producing from people. Now, we are being blamed, we means the educational system of India, that our graduates remain unemployed. Not only remain unemployed, but they are unemployable. But a few things I don't understand, that many people who don't get jobs are able to easily get jobs in Canada, Australia, Middle East. So it means things are not that bad. It was a matter of opportunity. So perhaps our economy was not creating enough opportunity to absorb large number of people who were coming out. Number one. Second thing, that we have large number of people who aspire to receive higher education. There are some very high quality institutions, and of course, many people might differ even on this issue, that some people would say that IITs are not the best institution, they might be the best undergraduate institution, but not very good. But still, they are producing people who are being employed everywhere. But the number of excellent institutions are few and far between to accommodate the demand. Just to cite one example, which is the latest, last year about 21 lakh people appeared for the NEET examination. Almost 11 lakhs of them scored 50% marks in the NEET examination. And 50% marks is the cutoff that if you score that much, it means you are eligible to pursue medical education in India or even abroad. It means 11 lakhs people had the ability, had qualified, wanted to. How many seats are in the medical education? Only 110,000. 1,10,000. उसमें से भी only half are public, rest are private, and the fees for the private medical education is so high that you could get at a third of the cost in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, in Central Asia. Of course, it has another challenge. The third thing that I would say is that increasingly our higher education is becoming expensive. So at the time of independence, our challenge was that how to bring those people who have historically been deprived of education, so like scheduled caste, or those people who were living almost like cut off from the mainstream, so how to bring them into the fold of education. But now today, when we are discussing at higher education or education at the crossroads, a new kind of barrier has emanated, and that barrier is affordability. We may have set up minority colleges, minority universities, but if you analyze, you will find that they are unable to get as many Muslim students, as many minority students, simply because the Muslims can't afford, because of their economic backwardness, of that kind of situation. So today, the situation is that of all the social groups, Muslim minorities are the one which are lagging far behind, and in many cases even are lower than the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So something need to be done about this. Finally, though I asked Shamama how much is time constraints, she said you have as much time, but I know that there are people and you would like to listen to them. So finally, I would say that so far in post-independence and even pre-independence time, higher education were places and spaces that provided scope for any or many ideas to germinate, to be discussed, to be worked on. A recent change that we are seeing, which could be disquieting, that ideology has started dominating on the ideas. So the idea of let 1,000 flowers bloom and let there be diversity, let there be many different kinds of institutions, that idea is now no more being discussed. So all institutions must have the same curricula, the same kind of teachers, the same kind of pedagogy. This is totally different than the best universities in the best countries of the world. There they allowed wherever. So Oxford is not like Kent University. Oxford, Cambridge is not like City University. They all have their own advantage. Within UK, there are about 100 universities. And they are all different in their approach, in their content, and accordingly their quality, etc. depends, and the system permits this. In India, until very recently, we have been permitting this. We were allowed to experiment. No thought was a bad thought. You could have played with that idea, you could have shared that idea, you could have published this idea, but presently no. You have to say and you have to work that, okay, we are a 10,000-year-old civilization. We've been a Vishwaguru. We are still a Vishwaguru. We must have Bharatiya-karan of all knowledge and systems. No wonder, to some extent, okay, if some institutions want to do that, allow them to do that. But if some institutions want to have a different point of view, so don't change. So don't try to change all the history. So I think the point of worry is, number one, this whole control on the higher education system about what you research, what you teach, how do you teach, and so on. Second challenge that we are seeing is that until this national education policy, they were all saying that privatization is our compulsion. We do not have enough money to support public higher education. But now they have started saying that privatization is actually a way of receiving higher education. So no qualm about privatization. Of course, they said that these private institutions must be public spirited, but that kind of enlightened private initiatives that we saw in the pre-independence period does not exist anymore. There are only a few ones who do this. So this is a challenge. Third challenge is that with the increasing bashing of higher education, sometimes I have a feeling that people may become disillusioned from higher education. So far they are not. Even though the education may not provide them immediate jobs, but people still want to receive education. Even though many people who were uneducated became richest in the world, Dhirubhai Ambani for example, but he still wanted his sons and grandsons to be studied at Harvard and Stanford. Maybe he realized that if I were educated, maybe professional education, I would have made more money or I would have been a better person. That is a challenge that we have to recognize, that let people not become disillusioned from education and start or give up education. We have seen that in America it has happened, that okay, if money is the purpose, why go for higher education? So their graduate schools are normally filled up with Chinese and Indian students and Hispanics and Asians. Americans themselves, they keep going out and they keep coming in. So these are all challenges. Sometime I have a feeling that we are now not as a crossroad. There are no dilemmas, there are no confusions, there are no controversies. The path has been laid for us and everybody has to follow that path. That is the something which may be worst for the future of the nation and for the future of this country.